the planning. The ESL teacher, the content teachers, possibly a curriculum coach might be involved in PLCs at times, an admin, principal, or AP might be in there as well. And always looking for that multilingual learner lens and thinking about what everyone can bring to that co-planning time to make it valuable. So we're going to take just a minute to look at the multiple lenses for planning. And this does come from the book itself, from Dr. Honigsfeld and Dove. So we want to consider the cognitive lens, the linguistic lens, and the social emotional lens. When we talk about the cognitive lens, we're talking about factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive knowledge. If we look at the linguistic lens, we're referring to core academic and discipline specific language skills, oracy, literacy, and metacognitive awareness. And then if we look at the social emotional lens, which we know has been brought in and is so important now, we think about self awareness, self management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making, character, and citizenship. So, teachers, co teachers, we want to model that, but look through this lens as we're planning our lessons for students. Considering the cognitive language and social aspects of learning, the authors challenge you not only to fully embrace content and language integration, but to expand your collaborative planning framework to include these lenses when preparing for the sake of your multilingual learners.
And from the same book that Lori was sharing about, this is a framework that was developed by Dove and Honigsfeld. These are just routines for co-planning success. And the very first one is organization. And you have to be organized for this to work. It doesn't mean everybody has to have the same organizational skills or anything. It just means you have to have a part that you play that's before you actually come together and co-plan. So organization and pre-planning, that's actually done independently. So that's before you even get with your co-teacher. So you'll have to think of things that you can bring to the table, things that you need in order to be organized, like access to the materials, curriculum maps, scope and sequence guides. All of these things are essential when we are trying to map out the year. We as teachers, each one of us, content and language, know what our kids need to do by the end of the year. What will be on EOCs, EOGs, assessments. That is why being organized is so critical. Having everything in order, knowing what you need to bring and when you need to bring it is of the utmost importance. So after engaging in this cycle of pre-planning, you will go into co-planning, which is the face-to-face part of it, and it's almost never enough. So there's work both inside of this and outside, together and apart. And then post planning is where the reflection piece comes in. What can we do after co planning and into post planning that's going to change what we have done for these students for the better? And within this, the first one we get to is organization. Lots of people have to choose a co-planning platform. I have to say that even though I'm in the age range where a lot of technology falls onto me, being in my 30s, I'm really not great at it. So my favorite type of co-planning is still face-to-face. However, I have found that our school system uses Google Suites, so Google Docs. I've gotten to where I've used Jamboards for co-planning, things like that. And when I go and meet with the co-teacher to prepare for that, I want to make sure that I have pacing guides, modules, the scope and sequence, everything that we need in order to make sure that our students are successful for the planning piece. And I know last week we looked at this briefly, but we're going to kind of jump in right here tonight and look into the mapping document where we have mapped out ELD standards, our English language development standards, and map them with the coinciding content standards. So we're going to share this out with all of you participants, and this is going to kind of how we give an introduction to language objectives and how ESL teachers or teachers of multilingual learners kind of adapt and change for their language objective along with the content objective.
Great. And the link is there. You can actually click on that yourself and open it. It should take you to that mapping document. And what I'm going to do is continue
Yes, and I will
to,
drop that in the chat for everyone too, in case people don't have that
great.
open.
Yes. And I hope you got a chance. The homework last week was to spend hopefully 30 minutes or so in there looking at the standards and going to the mapping document to map the ELD standards with all of our content standards. So we we don't have, a lot of time to spend in here tonight, but there are sessions on the ELD standards, and I would encourage you to, if anything comes up, if there are other offerings with the WIDA ELD standards and spending some time with those in planning, I would encourage you to do that. We have some great sessions and some in the future, I'm sure, that will be written based on this. So I'm going to move on to the next slide to show you just an example, okay, of how to use the mapping document to write we call it language expectation now, right? But you probably have heard language objective with the content objective. So when we have a language expectation, it might look like this. So if we look at the ELD standards and content standards, ELD, this is science 4.5, explain interpretive. Interpret scientific explanations by identifying evidence that supports particular points in an explanation. So we're looking at grade 4, and this is grade 4, and the P is for, I think, physical science. And so P1, explain how various forces affect the motion of an object. So you can see 4P11 and 4P12. Take just a minute and read those to yourself. All right, so this is the science standard. So we've got the ELD Science 4.5, Explain Interpretive, and a Grade 4 Science Standard. So we're going to look at this slide for just a minute and give you an overview of what an integrated content and language objective looks like to form a full language expectation. And we have it labeled here to help you color coded and so forth. So let me read it first, just as it is. Students will be able to express how magnets interact with iron objects by describing observations and or data using noun groups. So if we go back to the beginning, we start with students will be able to. Now, express is the mode of communication, and this is the verb form. So we have the expressive mode and we have the interpretive mode now. The expressive mode is when a student will speak, write, or represent. The interpretive mode is when a student would read, listen, or view. And then we have our content piece that we brought in here from the content objective, how magnets interact with iron objects by, and then the blue is the language function. This is the verbiage from the language expectation, describing observations and or data. And lastly, using, the purple is the language feature. Noun groups. What particular part of language are we teaching? So we fill in those spaces, and then we have created this beautiful language expectation that meets a language objective and a content objective. Now, I'm going to give you just a minute, and I want you to, if you've clicked on that mapping document, if you want to go to your grade level, go to your content area, and just take a minute to look, see how it's matched up with the ELD standard in a particular content objective, and just look at that for a minute and think about how you might try to combine that and write a language expectation using that content. So this is just for you. So just take a minute and explore that, and then we'll come back together and move on.
And Lori, I was just going to say too, I know that we have a few administrators on here, and just like how powerful of a tool that could be in PLCs for curriculum alignment, kind of. If your ESL teachers were able to join your PLCs with the content teachers, it's just a great thing to see how language and content truly can overlap.
I'd also like to say that this would be a great way to co-plan, right? To co-write a language expectation. You get together and look at the document and think about your, if you're the ESL teacher, the ELD standard. If you're the classroom content teacher, looking at your content standards, and then coming up with a language expectation together that meets both. So take just another minute and look at that mapping document. All right, so we're only 30 minutes in, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. I know a lot of you probably had a very long day. So, and it's the middle of the week, right? You've made it halfway. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll come back and keep going. So enjoy your 5-minute break.
Some of these are for you as teachers, others are for you and your students. But think about how technology for collaboration can be so helpful when you are co-planning. There are different apps that are on here, different websites. Jamboard, I'm sure everyone is familiar with. I have gotten to be a huge fan of Jamboard, especially when we're just jotting down ideas with co-planning with other teachers, just so I have somewhere that's a shared space so that I don't forget. Same thing with Google Docs and Google Slides. There's also Google Hangouts, which are much like WebEx and Zoom and Google Meet. Padlet is another app that kind of is like a catch-all for sticky notes. I'm a huge fan of Padlet. I've used it both with teachers and with my students in the classroom. Flipgrid, now known as Flip, is another great thing that you can use for collaboration. It can be videos that you've recorded that you want to share with other people. Parlay is a great thing that's like Socratic seminars that you can hold online. We have Ziplet, and it's a way to kind of conduct a check-in. You can do this with students, but you can also just kind of send forms out to your co-teachers throughout Ziplet, and it's a great check-in tool. Kahoot can be used for assessments that you will see later on tonight, but just kind of a platform to use in order to assess your students and see where they are, but so that you and your co-teacher can work on those and collaborate together. And then one of the last ones that I wanted to make sure that I talked about tonight that I have just discovered this year, and some of you may already know, is PeerGrade. And it's an online platform where you as teachers can grade and give instant feedback to your students and have sessions with them online so that you can talk about their assignments. And I think that's a super powerful tool when you're measuring student progress and data. But I know that I left some out. And so I want you to think about ways that you can use technology to collaborate. Specifically in these, if you could think about times to collaborate with teachers using technology. And I would be happy to add those in for later. So in the chat, if you could drop a way to use technology for collaboration, that would be great. And I have to be honest, Microsoft and things like that. We're such a Google school that I'm not very great with Microsoft anymore, but this team has helped me learn that. I've had to learn a lot of new tricks. Nearpod, yes, I love Nearpod too. That's great. It's on there, but I did not talk about it. Shared Google Doc with a set template. Yeah, I like that too. And I'm all about some templates. Mentimeter, yes, I love Mentimeter. Google Apps, yep, those are all great. I have to add in some of these next time, so that will be great for us. Thank you.
And continue to put those in the chat as you think of some.
We have now come to our first handout of the night. So if you can open up the Google Docs handout where all of the sheets are, and I can drop that back in the chat for you really quickly. The first one that we are going to look at tonight is the co-planning handouts. And it's more of a long document, but within those, there are tons of templates There are co-planning resources, things that you can use for weekly routines, but it's important that you have some type of tool, whether it be online or on paper. I'm still very much a paper pencil person. I love to write, and I know one thing that this team has learned about me is I really like my handwriting. So that's one thing that I will keep with that. But it can be a unit at a glance, it can be a daily lesson plan template, or it can just be a weekly schedule. But these are things that you can do in the pre-planning and the organizational part that you can bring for those face-to-face meets. So within your handouts, you should be able to see these two along with other templates that are available to you. And if you have another template, that's great. If you have something going and working for you, depending on where you are in your co-teaching journey, it's just important that we have something to use so it's not just paper, pencil, or let's email each other back and forth. I think having a set template and a space to kind of work ahead is great.
All right, so we're going to talk about routines for pre-planning. So we have thought about the organization piece, all the things that you need, a platform, a way to plan together. So the pre-planning part, again, can be completed separately. But think about what you can do in that pre-planning time. So you're going to preview upcoming content, explore that needed academic language. We know how important academic language is for our multilingual learners, and we need to be able to pick and really focus in on doing some vocabulary work with the academic language of the content. And then, of course, you want to identify the possible content or language objective. And we just talked about that with the mapping, that you can create that language expectation together. Think about those difficult concepts and skills, and then possibly individual or group resources and activities. Kind of brainstorm those resources you might use and brainstorm the activities that you could bring to that planning session. When we get to the co-planning piece, all right, this is what is completed together as we saw in that PLC, or it may just be two teachers together, an ESL teacher and one classroom teacher planning. So using, your agreed upon platform, however you are planning, you're going to make sure that you cover these 6 or 7 bullets here. So read those to yourself quickly. All right, so taking those topics there, think about when you're together with that colleague, you want to decide on as many details as you can in the time allotted that you have for planning. And these are just some recommendations of the types of details you might want to cover. So think about what you're focusing on. And if you have that one common planning time a week, you'll have to do a lot more during that post-planning time to then prepare for that lesson that you're going to teach, right? But think about, what is the bare minimum of co-planning time that I need to meet with this teacher and be able to do what I need to do to then follow up and be ready for that lesson. And it's really hard to attach a number of minutes to that. There's no set time. You can't say, well, we'll have a great lesson planned in 15 minutes. We'll have a great lesson planned in 30 minutes. That's just not how it works, as you know. So if the entire team is together once a week, if that's even possible, that co-planning time can be very rich. If you're not able to do that once a week, then you're going to have to figure out those ways that you can do that post-planning on your own to get ready for that lesson. So think about what the goal is when you're planning, and then when you're finished, make sure you leave with the goals and what you have to do to finish your post-planning to be ready again for that lesson. Now, one suggestion is that, I think it was last week in our session, we talked about what is an ideal number of teachers that you can co-teach with. And I think one of the suggestions was 2 or 3 that you could plan well with and co-teach well with. So it depends on your schedule, depends on what level you're at, elementary, middle, high. There are a lot of factors that go into this, but you want to make sure that you're not overextending yourself too, because if you're in too many co-teaching classes, you're not going to be able to do all the planning and the teaching and the follow-up that needs to happen. So just remembering a model number of classrooms that you could co-teach well in, and you might have to bring that up to your administrator and share that. I think I could do this well in my schedule when you're thinking about the schedule for your year. So moving along, if we look at the post planning, we're going to look at post planning for just a minute. So again, from your agreed upon roles and responsibilities, what are you going to do to complete that lesson plan to know what you need to bring to the classroom that day? And you're going to gather and prepare those needed materials. There were many times that when I co-taught in an elementary school, the teacher and I met and we had the objectives, the activities, and then I knew when I left after planning with her, and it was a short time. Okay, when I go back to my classroom during another planning time, I've got to get these materials ready for this lesson to be ready. So we would do that on our own and be ready. So we've got some good guidelines here. We've had our organization, the pre-planning, co-planning, and post-planning. What we want to do now is we're going to try our first breakout room. So we're excited about breakout rooms, hoping this works, right? So in your handouts again, you have a collaboration menu. So if you can go to those handouts, and I don't know, Maggie, if you want to try to drop that in the box again or if anybody needs it.
It's right there.
All right. And I don't know, I can't really see myself either. I'm just seeing the screen. But
Yep.
it looks like a menu, and it says a
Yes.
menu for supporting ELLs. You've got the tomatoes up there. What's cooking?
And
All
it
right.
actually, on the handout sheet, it says copy of collaboration menu. It's the second link
Okay.
on the top.
Awesome.
Mhm.
All right. So you will see that we have starters, main dishes, and just desserts. So right now, your goal is to choose one starter from that list, just the starters, the co-planning from this menu that you could use to co-plan starting next week, let's say, right? So you're going to share this with the people in your breakout room, and we're going to get this set up, and Maggie will lead us
I'm ready.
through the breakout part, and you're going to have, I think, about 5 minutes. Is that what we have set? So we should have
Yes.
6 rooms, and depending on
And
how many folks are here, there may be 3 or 4 people in a
Mhm.
group.
Yep. I have it set up. If you are in a room, I can see everybody. So if you get in and people haven't joined because they've had to step away, I will try to maneuver you guys around so that you're not alone. If you just give me just a second, but I'm going to go ahead
All
and
right.
create them, and then
Awesome.
Lori and I can pop in and out of rooms to
Yeah.
hear you guys talk.
And I'm in as a participant too, so I may be thrown in a room, but I won't be actually in that room, but we'll pop in and out as we can. We'll try this out. All right, here we go.
Here we go. Okay, I heard a lot of great conversations, Lori.
Yes, me too. I was in a great one.
And I know it's so funny. I was like, we're getting ready to get kicked out, but I promise when we go back, I'll talk about it. And I don't want to misspeak for anyone. So please, Ivana, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that, co-teaching, we have to put in the time, the effort, the planning pieces of it. And Lori, you hit on how important it was to not overdo it with so many teachers. And in our district, not saying this is right nor wrong, um, it's just a lot of what I've heard is like co-teaching can be, I've heard different time increments, right? And my biggest thing is if it's co-teaching, it should be longer than what a pull-out type of class would be.
Mm.
So I technically, when I co-taught, and I co-taught in third, fourth, and fifth grade, different years, but I've done it for 11 years. But I stayed entire blocks, so 90 minutes. And I know that's not possible for everyone if that's like best case scenario. But I was the only ESL teacher at the school that I was at and served about 75 students. It was all about kind of how we cluster, but I had heard that a lot, and I wanted to clarify that with either one of you guys. When I think of co-teaching, I just think of at least an hour. Like it wouldn't. It'd be more like a push in, but as a type of assistant role, if that makes sense.
Well, I will chime in and say that I never co-taught for an hour in a classroom because of my schedule. Most of
Mm-hmm.
my co-teaching was 30 minutes to 45. I think that's the most I ever had. And I was split between 2 schools, so I was able to co-teach with 2 at one school and 2 at another, and not 5 days a week because that was impossible. It
Mm-hmm.
was really hard to do that going between 2 schools as well. But I feel like it just depends. It depends on the schedule, I think, and You just, but I mean, to me, I was able to do some really great 30-minute co-teaching sessions the way we had it organized, but we had to be very organized and we did have to plan.
And I think
So
that's where that biggest part for this comes in is if you
right.
plan for that amount of time, it still will be successful. I just also just from my point, I just wanted to get your take too. So,
Sure, sure.
but the conversations that I heard were great.
Yes, and I think one of the main themes that keeps coming out is the the challenge for the time to co-plan,
Hmm.
obviously. I think
Yes.
still so many teachers feel like, or ESL teachers that are going into classrooms feel like it is just like, I'm scheduled, it's a push in, I come in and I'm figuring out what the students are doing, trying to help scaffold and differentiate on the fly or work on vocabulary. So we realize that and hope that future relationships can be better and stronger, and that you work towards that, trying to figure out a way to co-plan in some way so that you're able to meet the needs of your students, because we know what you do is for your students. So
And
all right,
Courtney had a great thought. It could depend on the length of the complete lesson. So
sure,
in primary grades, a lot of the lessons are shorter. So I think that's also
true.
a
Mm,
good take on that.
right, right. All right, we'll move right along then.
And you have to reshare.
Oh, thank
After
you.
remember after
Yes,
breakout
all right,
rooms, it
that's right. I was
disappears.
in and out
Hmm.
of a room. All right, so hold on. Okay, I've got to give me a second. This is
That's okay.
sharing
Um,
my, see, the
while
whole thing
Lori
has
is pulling
changed on
that
me.
up to reshare, we're going to
Yes,
kind of
here we
move
go.
into co-teaching and instructional routines. So pieces that show great examples of what co-teaching should look like, pieces that you're just like, wow, is that co-teaching at all? So we're
Mm.
going to kind of do it like I would like to think of this as a game show. Our school has 3 ESL teachers, maybe approximately 40 to 50 ESL students in each grade level. Our ESL teachers try to push into every English class in each grade level. Yeah, that I think that's great. 3 ESL teachers.
All right.
Is it are you K5? Cecil Lake.
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. Yes,
There's
you were
like
in the group that I was with.
yeah, there's like
That was
20 of us
yes.
in this meeting.
Yes, that's great.
It's
So
awesome.
as we kind of move into co-teaching and instructional routines, we'll
Maggie,
talk
I've
about
shared. Have
exam.
you,
I
can
can
you
see it.
see?
You're good.
Oh, good,
Hmm.
good, good. It was green for a minute. That's why I was
Yeah.
scared. And then my other screen went off. I apologize. Keep going. Keep
No, no,
trucking.
you're fine. So the first thing that we're going to look at in co-teaching routines are examples and non-examples. And again, for these on the next slide, you will see, and I also learned something new, Lori, because the group that I had was very smart. They can share their own screen in breakout rooms. So they had
Awesome.
the
Woohoo.
menu pulled up and it was great. So here we're going to try again to get in breakout rooms, not for quite as long. The colors at the bottom of the screen do not indicate whether or not it's an example or a non-example. It just kind of shows you where one phrase starts and one ends. So that way you know how they're separated. They get kind of close. So in just a minute, we're going to put you guys back into breakout rooms. And I want you to think with your group, is it an example of a co-teaching routine or is it a non-example? And you would think that some of these were silly, but I promise you they have been done and you can see them frequently depending on where you go and what you see and kind of how people are and where they're at in their journey. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the breakout sessions. They may stay the same. In fact, I think it does look like they've stayed the same. But we're going to go ahead and set out breakout sessions. We're going to come back together in 3 minutes. So see if you can find the examples versus the non-examples.
Maggie, I'm just going to stay out, I think, because it throws me out and I have to try to get
Okay.
everything back and loaded. I think I probably should not go off the screen. It says I left the meeting, but I'm here. I think it's my participant.
The one thing I didn't think too, Lori, when they go to breakout rooms, they can't see this, but if they have it up, they can see that.
Oh, true, true. If they, hopefully they can, if they had it up. I hope so. I might
The
should remind
joint,
them of that next time. Make sure they have
I
that
know. I didn't think about it
slide
until
up
right
and
now because the menu they had. Mhm.
right, right.
We're counting down to come back. Some
All right.
were looking at their handouts, but that's something I guess I could have dropped it in the chat. I'll have to think about that.
But this is not a handout. You mean,
Yeah, it's not a handout.
right, right, right. But they just need to have that slide up if they
Mhm.
can. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I was thinking that they could still see this when they went to the breakout room.
That would be a great upgrade to WebEx.
At least everyone is so nice. I
Yes,
was
they
like,
are. Wonderful.
and I think some people that are on their phones can't join breakout rooms.
Okay. Maybe some folks are coming back now. Yep.
Yep. They're all coming back.
So this one actually you have to press a button to get back, right? Or do you guys pull us back in?
So we pull you back in once I
Okay.
end the breakout. You can hit the button, but it's scary because people think if they hit the door, they're going to leave the whole meet.
Right.
So it's like you click it and then you're like, oh, I don't know. But after
Well, I
after
have
a
a
minute,
little
it kicks you back in.
tab.
Mhm.
The tab up here says leave breakout room. So I click that. But listen,
Perfect.
when I'm in there, I hear myself and then I hear myself repeating it and it makes it difficult to concentrate and speak. What's causing that? What am I doing wrong?
I haven't. Can you hear yourself? Does
Not
it happen in the
here.
main
It's
room?
just no, just in the breakout room. I'll say something and then I hear myself just a split second after.
Like the
And
Probably
echo of,
probably
yeah.
somebody else's microphone picking up your audio at a too high of a
Oh, that
level,
is what that is.
and then it's
Okay.
giving your sound back to you through
Thank
your
you.
speaker. Hmm.
I do remember someone telling me that one time. Now that you mentioned that, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I did not know the
yes.
answer.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, that's a logical answer. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, I forget those things as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome.
All right. So hopefully another thing that we talked about with each other was being able to kind of share the screen within there, but these were on the slides if you were following along. So hopefully you had access to those while you were talking. So once we'll first look at the different examples of the correct examples of co-teaching routines. And hopefully this was easy. So the examples are that you should share your responsibilities. It's joint. The verbiage changes from my class to our class. The co-planning is together. We teach together. You share the learning, you share the successes and the false starts. And I like that. That way it doesn't sound kind of as negative. So false starts because you can make it better. The communication and trust are equal and it's joint problem solving. And I am one that I love to talk things out. And so I think two heads are better than one. So co-teaching just kind of works for me and my personality type. And I think that's important to kind of talk about too, that I've heard in some of the breakout rooms that I've been in. It can't be forced. Both people have to kind of be willing. And I think that if you look over some of the things that you think you can't let go of, you find out that you can. And we kind of talked about that last week with our non-negotiables. So the fun ones for me. Now we will look at the non-examples of co-teaching, where each person take turns teaching. And this isn't referring to tandem teaching. That's when you're doing it together. It's planned out that way. You're adding on to what each other's saying. This is clearly where I'm going to teach for 15 minutes, Lori, and then it's your turn. So it's not my kids, your kids. It's not you plan and I'll do. You teach while I drink coffee and grade all the papers. You do see that a lot. And I think that that's where we have to understand that we're both equals in the classroom. It's not a helper that's coming into the classroom, a volunteer, or an extra TA. There's no time to plan and anything goes. Clearly, one of the largest things that we're going to learn tonight is the fact that time to plan can't be something that's negotiable. And also, evaluation, where they're going to go and tell the principal things that you are doing wrong. So you think that that was obvious, but there's still very much things that you could see when walking into a newly established co-teaching environment.
Right. So it's not evaluating, but coaching. We can coach each other, especially if you've built that mutual trust. You can definitely coach. All right. So looking at ownership, taking ownership of this collaborative cycle, this is a crucial step, we believe. And if you look at this picture of two gentlemen in front of a classroom co-presenting or co-teaching, co-training possibly. So after agreeing what co-teaching is and is not in those routines, just like we looked at, teachers must collaborate about the environment. Sometimes we forget about the setup of the classroom and the groupings of the desks and how the students will work and how the teachers will move in and out of those groups. So we have to consider that. And about the roles again, taking ownership of your role. This is my role at this time in this model. This is what I'm focused on. This is what I'm doing. And then you can find that right fit model. Sometimes you may try several different models with a particular co-teacher and you find out, hey, this one really works for us. And so you stick more with that model so it becomes routine and you know what to expect. So it can become more second nature. We've seen some great presenters that come out and train together and it's just ebb and flow. It's like they finish each other's sentences and you can get to that point. But taking ownership of your role, taking ownership of even the environment and taking ownership of these are our students. All right, so the next few slides, we're going to look at models based on the instruction needed. And we want to know what co-teaching model do you think these are examples of? So we learned in depth last Wednesday about those 7 models of co-teaching. So that's what we're going to refer back to right now. And I don't know if you want to go back to that handout with those 7 models. There were 3 on the front and 4 on the back.
I will share that in the chat. I'm pulling it up right now.
Great. And if we had anybody that was not here last week that wants to pull that up as a reference to see, that will help you because we want to connect and see which model do we think these types of instruction needed would represent. So I'm going to model one example here. So tandem, let's look at tandem. Both teachers lead instruction, scripted or impromptu. Tandem is model 2, where 2 teachers teach the same content to one group. All right, now in the chat, if you will, look at supporting. One teacher presents, one teacher rotates to individual students and it allows for immediate feedback. Which model do you think this represents? And I will give you a hint. It's probably 1, 2, or 3. Which one do you think? Now, I have my opinion, my professional opinion, but you also have yours based on what you've looked at and studied and done yourself. So let me open the chat too, and Maggie, you might help me with this, and we'll just see if anybody wants to throw in there what you think. Model, so supporting,
So far, we've got one teach and assess, one leads and another teaches on purpose. We have two
okay,
of those.
got it. So model one, right? One lead teacher, another teacher's teaching on purpose, or I can see where teach and assess, it might be that one teacher teaching, and then it's because it says one teacher rotates to individual students and allowing for that immediate feedback. So yes, definitely it could be that as well. And that would be model 3. So maybe 1 or 3. Any other? Anybody beg to differ? We might agree with that. Okay, so let's look at modeling, the one in the middle here then. So one teacher leads, one teacher questions, writes notes, or models for the class. What model do you think that would match up with? You can throw that in the chat as well. Anyone have an
They're
idea?
still looking.
Yeah, still looking. That's fine. I know you have to analyze these models.
Mhm. Same. They're saying the same. One teach and one's on purpose.
Okay, so possibly model 1.
Mhm. Two teachers teach the same content.
Okay, so model 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of my favorites, I think, from the videos that we watched last week. Those two teachers that were teaching together. One was teaching and leading the discussion, the other was writing and clarifying things on the board. And then midway through the lesson, they switched and they
Mhm.
kept teaching together the content. Any others?
I think we're in agreement with one of
Okay.
those.
All right, awesome. All right, so let's go to the next slide and look at some more examples of instruction needed in the classroom. So let's look at paralleling. So both teachers teach the same standard to different groups using different approaches. Still in the same classroom here. Look at your models.
Small groups, which is multiple student groups. Model set.
Right, depending on how many groups you have. So let's say for
Mhm.
paralleling, let's say we have two groups, right? Two groups of students, and each group is being differentiated for.
Two teachers teach the same content. And then I have another
Okay.
that says pre-teach, reteach, and alternative.
Right. So model 4 seems to fit, but depending on what you're doing in those two groups, I would agree. It could be that model 5 or 6, right? I mean, if you had more
Yes,
than
and
two
that's what the
groups.
last
Yeah.
the last one says two groups, but two teachers teach the same content.
Okay. And then let's look at targeting. Both teachers teach groups based on student proficiency. Think about that, based on student proficiency. So you know that proficiency and you are differentiating what might that be, which model.
Two groups, but one reteaches and another teaches alternative information.
Okay, so model 6. Any others?
Or pre-teaches.
Could be the pre-teaching, right? So that could be model 5. I know the description of Model 6 specifically says students at various proficiency levels, but then Model 5 says, based on a readiness
Mhm.
level, which you could interpret as a proficiency level, possibly, right? Okay, great. So these are some great examples. And the last one, I think this is our last centers. Both teachers engage students during small group and independent practice. I think this will be an easy one. So we have multiple,
Model 7, small group.
yeah, Model 7. Two teachers monitor and teach. So moving from working with a teacher and then going to an independent station, right? Centers.
And it's funny because we know we all have our favorites, and I feel
Oh,
like a
yeah.
lot of people love this one, and this one's just not for me.
That definitely takes some organization, right? To get that
Mhm.
going and flowing. All right, let's look at separate location. The ELD teacher teaches MLs in a different setting. First of all, my question is this co-teaching?
Your first person just said this is pullout.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Is
Trick
this
question.
really co-teaching?
Mhm.
But if for some reason, you are co-planning and co-teaching, but maybe in, an extenuating circumstance, you end up taking that group out. I have actually seen some videos of co-teaching and for part of the lesson, the ESL teacher took a group outside on the sidewalk and did a quick lesson like with sidewalk chalk on the sidewalk and then came right back in. Um, but it could fit model 4, 5, or 6. But you really, you have to stop and think, as we said, is this really co-teaching? But that depends on, is this the day to day, or is this just for a particular lesson, something that you're doing in a separate location? Great. So thank you for taking time to analyze those models and deciding which ones matched up to the instruction needed in the classroom. All right, so this brings us to the point of looking at our menu again then. So we want to now, with your breakout room participants, your new colleagues and friends, if you will choose one main dish from the menu, right, that you could use to co-teach starting next week. And then you're going to share this with with the people in your breakout room. So looking at that middle section, main dishes, co-teaching. So you might want to make sure that you have that accessible on your computer as you go into your breakout room. And then just be mindful of muting and unmuting with the sound and so forth so you can hear each other. All right,
And
Maggie?
that was another thing I learned. You can share your screen. So if one person wanted to pull that up and share it within the groups, you guys are teaching me all new tricks, and I'm very appreciative of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and set breakout rooms up. And Lori, how long are we given? 5 minutes?
5 minutes, yes.
All right, here we go.
Um,
One thing that's great with these breakout rooms, Lori, and I'm sorry,
no, you're
is
fine.
just
Go.
people sharing like success stories, but also like the other side of it, like things do happen and obstacles are there that you have to overcome. But, if you want to make it work, you do make it work. And I think that that's just important to listen to all of these other people. I was in some breakout rooms where some people are brand new to this or are hoping to try this. And then there's others that have done this for a few years. And just hearing how different it is at every point is a great thing to hear because you're not alone. So I think that that's important.
True, true. So hope you had some time to look at those main dishes. I know I read through them and I was thinking about them myself. That first one, the small group work or splitting the students in half, and they were saying it was a perfect for a debate. So thinking about social studies, if you've got for and against, and one teacher is guiding one half of the students to the argument to argue for, a particular concept or topic, and then the other teacher might be helping them formulate their argument against. And then I loved the consultant having the students be able to come over to a table for writing center. We saw that last week in one of the videos where they did that in a math class. I think it was a high school math class, two teachers teaching, and one went to the table and they were able to go over and get some extra help, right? So the writing center, extra help on writing, it could happen for any content. And then that vocabulary expert, I love that one too, where, the teachers can be walking around the room and really helping individual students with vocabulary and that impromptu, quick vocabulary lesson, almost like being a walking dictionary, I would say. that's one way to help for sure. So thank you for participating in that breakout. All right, so we're right at halfway through the whole session today at 5:30. 5-minute break. So if you will, you can mute and take your or turn your camera off and take a 5-minute break, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, if you can hear me, we are back. Welcome back. I'm going to wait just a minute, make sure Maggie's here. There she is. All
I'm
right.
here.
Yes, good. And please feel free to, if your internet is strong enough wherever you are to have your video on, because we'd love to see your faces when you are engaged in participating with us either way, but we'd love to see your faces. So we're going to move along now with, oops, I'm not going to start that again. No. There we go, Maggie.
All right, we're now going to move on to collaborative assessment practices. So we're going to hit the next part in the collaborative instructional cycle. All right, so we have talked about co-planning, co-teaching, and now we're really going to hit co-assessing, which means that we're assessing our students together. So that is what we are looking at next. All right, if you will take just a minute to read what collaborative assessment is, and then we're going to have someone summarize. All right, and in a short summary, if someone will share in the chat, what do you gather from that? And if you would rather not chat, you can unmute if you guys would rather talk. What do you gather from collaborative assessment? Culturally responsive. I like that. And I think that's super important for us because one of the biggest things that we talk about when we are giving instruction is how we're tapping into the students' prior knowledge and building on their background for what they already know. Multiple formats for a clearer picture of student learning. I love that. We know that not all students are great at multiple choice tests. They are not great at writing essays, but we can figure out different types of assessments that students are well on. Focuses on EL students when so much, oops, sorry. I love all the answers. I lost where I was. So much of the time as they see as an afterthought. Yes. It's good for the EL teacher to test language skills and classroom teacher to assess content. I love that too. I used to always tell the reading teachers that I worked with in younger grades that no one wanted me to teach their kids how to read. That was not my lane. Outcomes through multiple dimensions, and you get a more well-rounded impression of what they can do. I also really like that. It's about the whole student, right? It's not just about the one thing that they can or can't do. It's about the student in general. Multiple dimensions and by equitable means. Yes, love that too. So before we kind of get in any further into collaborative assessment, I want us to do kind of like a fun activity on the next slide. It is about co-assessment. And if you can use the QR code down at the bottom, or you can click on the link that is there, and I can also try to drop the link for you right here if I can get to it. This is an answer garden, and I don't know if you guys have used this, but it's kind of like a word cloud. I'm gonna drop it there. It's in the chat now. I want you to think of what is important to consider when you are co-assessing a student. It can be one word, it can be multiple, but what this is going to do is take the most populated answers and kind of make them into a word cloud. I think that should work for everyone. I'll give you just a minute to do that. Ooh. I've actually never seen one of these in person, so this is great. And on here, I'm seeing a lot of that they are ML friendly language, the language ability, language development, equity, their background. I think that that's great. I'll give you just a little bit longer to type in your answers. Culturally responsive. I think that the student abilities, the culture, focus on strengths. I like that. I think that's important sometimes. Not that content teachers they don't focus on the weaknesses, but they're graded on that one standard, and it really depends on if they can do it or not. But focusing on student strength, I think, is super important in this type of relationship and the assessment between the two. Love it. Okay. Just a few more seconds. Every time I refresh, words get a lot bigger. I love that. And before the end of the night, I will share out the answer garden. I think that it was great, and I may be able to do it right here. Let's see. No, that's the same link. Does it take you?
And after the training, you can embed it there on that slide. We have the next slide. You can
Yes.
embed it and everybody can come back and see it for sure.
Yes, and I love that. And like I said, language and content are growing larger every time, activating their assets. That's great. So I think that it just shows that so many different things can be thought of when you are looking to assess the student on the different things that they have to offer and what they still need to know. So as Lori said, I will embed the word cloud or the answer garden after the training is over, and it will go into yours as well.
And I love this activity for students as well. Yep.
All right, now we have co-assessment. So I know the reality of what school is like and how much is thrown at us in every direction, no matter if we're content or if we are ELD teachers. But the expectation is that we still have to co-assess. So as we're moving forward and we're moving towards implementing co-teaching with fidelity, so that means we are doing every single part that we have talked about thus far, we must think about these different things. What is the purpose of assessment? Why are we assessing the students on this material? What are some of the types of formative and summative assessments that are currently being used with your students? So what are the different types? They don't have to be formal at all. They could be check-ins. And how do we help co-assess? How is it that we do that together? And if you could, in the chat, just think of your classroom. It could be this year, it could be last year, or maybe something you're working towards in the future, kind of like a goal. But what type of assessments are you using in your classroom? And if you are not co-teaching right now, you can still share the type of assessments that you use to measure student growth. And even maybe how you evaluate your own instruction as an educator. Share out some of your assessment types. A rubric for writing. Standards-based tests on SchoolNet, yes. Projects, presentations, drawings, matching maps. I love that because it sounds like modified assignments for some of our lower MLs. I appreciate iReady because it is sensitive to student growth. I love iReady. So one of the good things about iReady, even if we're not focusing on the diagnostic part of it, is it helps to kind of gain ground, right? It helps show some of the lessons that maybe you as a teacher, if you are content, can't necessarily get to because it's lower, but it shows the intervention pieces. So I'm sure everyone loves that you guys love iReady. There's lots of data there for sure. Okay, is there anything else? And I know that I saw rubrics, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for writing. We could do rubrics for speaking and just kind of how to assess and measure growth that way. Nearpod, they can do read alouds for students where they can answer other types of questions. Yes, I do love Nearpod. That's great. I used to use Nearpod for virtual field trips, and that was fun. All right. And just to kind of get some other ideas, we are going to look at different types of assessments, because one that I haven't seen, and not saying that they're not implemented in your classrooms, but things like pre-assessments, just to even kind of get to know your students, specifically MLs, where we're trying to tap into their background and what they already know. So surveys, inventories, checklists, things to show what they already know, what they're interested in. And in that way, maybe you can take some of your standards and market it that way so that the instruction seems more appropriate for them and they're more engaged in what you have to offer. I used to love doing surveys in my elementary classrooms. It just made them seem like they were, they love to know more about what they already know about. But on the other side of it, you could give pre-test to see how much ground you have to make up, or maybe the class that you have gets everything so well and they already kind of know, so you don't have to spend as much time. So there's pre-assessments, there's those formative assessments that measure how they are learning. And that can be different things like quizzes, discussions, peer evaluation, scaffolded assignments. So I just love that kind of shows the flow from pre-assessments where it's no stakes, formative assessments are low stake, and then you get to the summative assessments that are high stakes that measured have they learned everything from beginning to end. Have they learned what they need to know? And these are your exams, the standardized tests that we see, final projects, essays, and portfolios. And there is a comment in the chat. Sentence frames for pre-work, culminating reflective activities on content. Yes, I love that. And I appreciate anything that's reflective. I think for educators and students too, like you get them to think and become, the captain of everything that they're there for. And I think that's a huge piece that's important as well. But these are just some different ongoing assessments that you can use at different times throughout the year. And I think they're all great for measuring different types of data.
All right, so our next video is called Critical Friends, Looking at Student Work. And consider this question: how does using protocols like Critical Friends help teachers become more reflective of their teaching practices? And I've seen this video multiple times in doing this training, and I think this is one of the best types of co-assessing I've ever seen. If you will just watch closely, I'm going to click play. I had to create an account. It may ask me to log in. If it does, give me just a minute and I'll do that. Let's just see if it starts. If not, I'll make sure I get in so we can watch this together. I think it's going to let me. All right, let's go. And just give me a thumbs up, Maggie, if you can hear it okay.
Here you're going to choose one historical example.
Schools and teachers have to become part of a process that is constantly reflecting and learning from each other in order to improve their curriculum.
Looking back, how could I have communicated that better?
There has to be some other way to assess it.
That's a skill that if our kids got, it would help them beyond.
So our teachers engage in protocols that allow them to get together as a group and in a way that lowers teachers' defenses, to give each other feedback and to help calibrate their understanding of what excellent student work is. One of those protocols is Critical Friends, which these teachers engage in regularly.
We offer likes and wonders and next steps and general critique on each other's work.
When I have Critical Friends, I can't wait. I know that I'm going to get ideas that I didn't think of. I get excited about that. I don't feel defensive about that.
Today we're going to do a end of project critical friends as opposed to the beginning of project. So we're starting with a new protocol. Stacia is going to be presenting her project to us. We're going to take 10 minutes for each section. The first section is describing the student work. So we're going to be looking at the student work which is here and over there on the whiteboards, and we're gathering evidence of what we see, not necessarily interpreting what we see. The next step will be interpreting from the student's perspective, trying to make sense of what the student was doing and why. The last step will be what are the implications of this work for teaching and assessment and what we learned from all of this. So Stacia, what you need to do is give a very brief statement of the assignment, just what you asked them to do, and don't give us any information about the students.
Okay, thanks. So this project was part of 11th grade U.S. history class. We were investigating industrialization and urbanization.
Teaching at a school like Tech Valley is an opportunity to be the teacher they've always wanted to be.
Take some time to look at the projects.
That requires the organization to become a learning organization.
Please remember, Stacia cannot be a part of this conversation. Pretend she's not here. She cannot be asked questions. She cannot respond. Okay, so we're going to start with the observation.
The board on the left, I'm not sure I ever read what their plan was with that location.
This board had a lot less detail on the solution compared to that one.
I noticed that the one board that has the design process didn't have anything written for the reflection.
Okay, we're going to move on to interpreting. Now we have to make sense of what the student was doing and why.
Interpreting based on what I see, maybe they weren't sure interpreting like how explicit they need to be in the design process.
That's a great point. Because on that poster right there, they have the process, but they don't have the output of the process.
Yeah.
We really challenge each other. We have everything from what content we teach to what skills we teach, how we teach them, really everything that we do in this school.
Are we supposed to get out of the history, or are we supposed to get out of today, or is it that timeline in between? Sometimes I've brought ideas, like I want to do a project on this, but I don't know how to do it. And so they've given me ideas on how to do it. And sometimes it's great, like, oh, I know someone who can help you. And it's a way to get connections to bring people into your project. I think that's something like Tom and I, when we used to teach together in Global, we wanted to do these amazing projects, and they came out very superficial because we were asking them to do too much.
What we did as a result was we would sometimes narrow the scope, but go deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
That collaborative component, which Critical Friends is a big piece of that, is really important to getting on the same page.
What can we say are the next steps, and how does it apply to not only Stacia, but ourselves in our classroom practice?
Right. I think as a kind of an overarching thing, not for this, just this project here, want to try to get the kids to know that they need to actually say what the problem is, not just say that what they did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How do we get the kids to actually define the problem?
Maybe the benchmarks lined up with the design process is one way.
And I think not letting them move on until they actually have defined the problem.
Then I wonder if there could be a workshop around putting together the right kind of presentation. So making sure that those pieces then end up on the trifold or somewhere in my presentation.
So Stacia, you can join us again. You are to share back what you learned about the student, the work, and what you're now thinking.
This is great. So you all highlighted several of the issues that I thought were issues within the project that I wasn't sure about. So I think the reality of what you all talked about choosing, maybe they either focus on how to benefit the community or focus on how to benefit the economy, even though we know that, those are two tied issues, that for 11th graders, if they could just focus on one of those, that would be great. Other things real quick that I just really hit home to me that I just did not think about before, the difference between defining the problem and stating the problem in the design process. That's huge. And I definitely agree that the students really need to go much deeper into that process, and that should be some good scaffolding work that we do at the beginning of the project.
Critical Friends helps elevate teachers to allow them to be successful in managing their own curriculum rather than just implementing someone else's.
Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate the feedback.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to debrief a little bit about this. Let me get back to our slides. And, sorry. Get back to here. All right. So just to recap, for this Critical Friends protocol, the teacher, the particular teacher, starts with explaining the project, and then all of her critical friends, right? They gather, interpret, and then decide the implications through this discussion. Remember, the teacher is not allowed to speak. She's in listen mode, right? She's only listening and taking in the information that all of the different teachers are sharing. So then she can share back at the end what she gained from that. So you can see how enriching this is. So first of all, just in the chat box, if you will, type yes or no. Would you ever participate in a co-assessment protocol like this? And you can even say yes, absolutely, or yes, maybe. No, I would not want to do this. Just getting some feedback. Some would love it, maybe. Yes, yes. Great to hear that kind of feedback. All right, great. Let's go into the questions in. Let's analyze this a little more deeply. Yeah, not sure, depends on the critical friends. Okay, so we know that there've got to be some parameters set up because there has to be this level of trust, right? Absolutely, I agree. Number one, how does using a protocol like this, like critical friends, help teachers become more reflective of their teaching practices? So if you'll put in the chat box a phrase or a sentence, how does this protocol help teachers become more reflective of their teaching practice? Seeing blind spots gives a different point of view. Right. Analyzing the student work right together is a great way to strengthen lessons for the next time. We can see if our peers point out strengths and weaknesses, right? And it's kind of that, you're in listening mode, almost like you're separated from it, and you're just listening to all the information, and they're not there to attack the teacher. They are simply analyzing the project and the work and what the students did from what the teacher expected. So it's a good way to just listen, not get defensive, and then take that critical feedback and make your lesson better, make the project better. Less professional isolation, growing, right? Learning from our peers. That's awesome. The focus is the student. Yes, absolutely. Good. All right, let's look at number 2, this question. What conditions are required for teachers to make use of this protocol? What conditions would we need in this group to work in this group and be a critical friend? Strong relationships based on trust and respect is key. Yes, you have to be quiet. At times you have to be, that's hard. And listening, right? One person at the time is speaking and sharing, getting their thoughts out, not interrupting. I know in my family, sometimes that's hard. Everyone wants to speak and we speak over each other or interrupt. We have to learn how to wait and listen and truly listen. Good. Time. Have a facilitator, have the student work there. The norms, set up some norms. Trust and kindness, good. Trust, I see trust again. I think trust is key, right? Building that relationship and everyone. And if everyone takes that turn and is that teacher that is listening and your critical friends are giving you that feedback, if everyone gets to be in the hot seat, we'll call it, then it's all good.
Someone
right.
also added in
Sure.
respect, Lori, but it went straight to me. So making sure that you
Sure.
respect each other enough
Yes.
to make sure that, the trust is there to not be offended. So I think that was
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And I think, there's this 3 stars and a wish. I think Ivana does that with our team sometimes, looking for the positives and the good. What are the strengths, but also not being afraid to say, what a weakness might be or how something could be better. That's really what that's all about. All right. Thank you for sharing that. So number 3, and our last question from this video is, how could this protocol be used with students? Think about that. Maybe I was going to say a certain level, but any students, elementary, middle, high, how could this be used with students, critical friends? And put that in the chat. Writer's workshop, peer editing, review an assignment, starting with the end in mind. They can analyze past projects before starting theirs. Oh, I love that. Right. Looking back at other projects and analyzing before moving and starting a new project to learn from it. Glow and grow. Yes, I love that phrase. A simple rubric to help critique a PBL, right? Project based learning. So just as these teachers were sitting and were critical friends, you could, train, model, and then train students to do the same thing. First, making sure that the conditions are there of trust and respect, and that they know how to wait their turn to share, right? Giving that constructive feedback, and that one person having to be quiet and listen and take into the end, or even maybe take some notes if possible about what they're learning from their critical friends. All right, so we're going to move along. Great. So now we want to look at a protocol for sampling student work. And this is actually from the book as well. This is from Dr. Honigsfeld and Dove. And this is a type of protocol that looks at linguistic development, academic needs, cultural experiences, and social emotional aspects of learning. So this focuses more on the student work, right? Not on the teacher's work, but indirectly, of course, we were talking about the teacher's assignment, what kind of assessment tool he or she uses. So our authors, they designed this 4-step protocol in which they look very closely at English learners' realities, such as their academic language and language development. The second was the disciplinary or the content-based academic needs, the content attainment in the lesson. So we're going to go beyond just content and language and think about the cultural experiences of the student. We're also going to look at those social emotional aspects of learning. So on the next slide, you will see this protocol. And this is in the book as well, as I said. And this lays out, it's called SWELL. We have acronyms for everything, right? So SWELL, SWELL, Sampling Work by English Language Learners. So this is a way to examine student work samples. So looking at 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to give you a minute to, let's read through this silently, just kind of skim through this for a minute to give you that background, and then we're going to get into breakout rooms again and discuss this. So just 1 minute, just read silently.
And Lori, I've also dropped it in the new session 2 handouts, and I'm dropping it in the chat
Good.
right now. That way, when we go to breakout rooms, they have it.
Yes, great. Yeah, make sure you have access to it, and then just read through it briefly before we go to breakout rooms. All right, so keeping in mind the 4 categories, right? Linguistic development, academic needs, cultural experiences and challenges, and social emotional aspects of learning. When you go into your breakout room, discuss how you think this could work for co-assessing students, and think about 2 teachers co-assessing and how they could use this protocol. All right, so Maggie's going to put us into breakout rooms to discuss this. We'll be there for about 5 minutes.
And I've done it differently so we can be with
Oh.
different people. So
Yay,
we're
awesome.
going to try it out. All right, here we go. right, Lori, I'm going to bring him back.
Okay.
All right, I think we are all back, Lori.
All right, great. So this protocol, it may take more time to really, wrap our minds around the 4 topics and all the questions that fall underneath. I think the idea of this is, how could you use this in co-assessing? So thinking about one suggestion from the authors is that if a content teacher and an ESL teacher, ELD teacher are co-assessing, could the ESL teacher be the one that's looking for assessing the linguistic, the language development, looking for particular pieces there, and possibly the cultural experiences and challenges of that student. Why are they struggling, or what's impeding the learning here, or what could help? And then the content teacher, the classroom teacher, might be looking more at the academic needs, the gaps in knowledge there, and the content knowledge and skills, and possibly other social emotional aspects of learning, with the content teachers being the ones that are with those students most of the time. What are things that they notice that might be keeping the student from being engaged in the task, or being able to persist or cooperate, and those types of things. So it's just another protocol from the authors that show a way to kind of pull out different things so that each teacher is using their expertise to assess in different ways. So hopefully that just is just another idea of something that could be done. Any thoughts about that, Maggie?
Question. Are
Yes.
the subcategories arranged in any particular order? Did they put linguistic development for number 1 on purpose, or because
That's a great
I can see
question,
why you
April.
might want to consider that first, but I'm an ESL teacher, so.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the lens that Dr. Honigsfeld and Maria Dove are coming from with all their work with multilingual learners. They're obviously probably going to start with that, saying, we must consider that linguistic development, the language development. And then, but I mean, I think all 4 are important, though. I think, they have all 4 listed there with those sub questions. But that's probably why they started with that, I would assume. Dr. Honigsfeld, I've actually been to one of her trainings before too, just as a shout out. She's an amazing presenter, and you all are in North Carolina. So just so you know, I did recently see that she will be in North Carolina and South Carolina, but in North Carolina next fall for a training.
October 2nd and 3rd.
Okay, yep. So shout out if anybody is interested or could get to that. She is phenomenal. I've been in a room with just, 20 or 30 people, and she was the presenter, and talk about engaging. It was a full day, and she's such a brilliant lady, and just such a lovely person too. But I think you would really enjoy. Yep, Carolina TESOL. Thank you. Carolina TESOL is the one that is presenting that. So and you can join Carolina TESOL too, because they've got some great sessions. But this would be just one example. But thank you for that question, April. That's, if we ever get to see Dr. Honigsfeld again, we can ask her, is this in this particular order for a reason? So, but knowing that all 4, we want to consider all 4 when we're assessing them. Understanding the whole child is what I would say. I go back to my 30 years ago, when I started teaching, the whole child is important. So we want to look at all the aspects of what they bring to their work and when we're assessing them. Okay, so to wrap up this part then, we're going to go back to our collaboration menu one last time, right? So we've had our starter or appetizer, we've had our main dish. Now we're going to look down at the desserts, right? Just desserts. So this is the co-assessing piece. So there are 5 different bullets there with some ideas about how you might co-assess. So make sure you have access to that. Maggie's dropped it in the chat box again. And if you, when you go into this breakout room, if you will take a few minutes and choose one, just, oh, I didn't go to the right slide. Here we go. Sorry. Choose one that you might be able to use, even starting next week, to co-assess if possible. If you could, what would you choose and what would you do? And share this with those in your room. All right, Maggie, if you'll put us in breakout rooms.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I know some of y'all are mid-talking. I'm sorry. We would go way past 7 o'clock.
All right. Yes, welcome back. And I hope you were able to share out something from the Just Desserts. I was looking at some of those assessing pieces, and one that I really liked is actually the last one, co-writing rubrics. Making a rubric and then creating models that meet different levels of the rubric. That's one question we had from an ESL teacher this year about the access testing, about the writing part. And he was wanting to know, where are the models for these, like level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? How will students know, what their writing should look like? Well, first of all, we say, well, that should be taught explicitly in the classroom when you're teaching writing and you model writing. But, when you do have a rubric and you're scoring it, having a model already ready for students to see, because you might score the rubric and the students understand, well, I need to do this, this, and this, but what does that really look like? When you say my writing should look like this. So having those models ready for students to use and learn from and then be able to write thereafter. All right, so we're going to move along here.
All right, and we are making it towards the final stretch. We are going to talk about reflection after collaboration and co-teaching. So within the collaborative instructional cycle, you will see that it is the last piece of the cycle, but we know with the cycle, it just keeps repeating itself. But this is where we come to reflect. We finally made it to the final component of the ongoing cycle, where we want to talk about what went well, but also what could be better. Not only are we looking for student growth, but we're also looking for growth within ourselves. And that's why that teacher feedback is so important. These relationships that we've established and the trust that's been built within, it's important that you aren't afraid to share things that you think could be better along the way. And next, this is another handout. It is actually a copy of the co-teaching self-assessment, a checklist. And I'm going to, just in case you can't get to the doc, I'm going to drop it here in the chat for you. And we're going to look at this for just a little bit. So once you get this pulled open, this is a self-assessment checklist for where you are right now in your co-teaching relationships. Not where you hope to be or maybe in a few years, but just right now. We're going to talk about the different stages in a little bit on the following slides, but just before we move on, this is just kind of like a pre-check to find out kind of where we are. We'll reflect on the self-assessment along the way, and we'll identify the current stage that you're at. Please notice the one thing that you will see, it says in our co-teaching partnership, that's us together. You will notice that every statement begins with the word we. It's no longer about finger pointing or saying you or I. This is a collaborative team. So it's all about, are we there yet? And yet's not a bad thing. It's just if you're feeling overwhelmed by any of these tools or any things that you can look at, just take your time. It's okay if you feel overwhelmed. Trust me, I felt that plenty in these types of situations. But just to kind of think of where we are so that we can lay down the implementation. So it's okay. Like, we're a team. Roles can be identified, but we're still doing this together. So if you will take a few minutes to kind of fill out this co-teaching self-assessment. And Lori, about how long do you think we should give for this?
Two or 3 minutes, I think, you know. And if you're not currently in a co-teaching relationship, you could at least just read through these and see what the assessment is all about.
Yes. And it's okay to have no's, right? Because it's all about growth. And once you finish, if someone would like to drop in the chat or give some thumbs up, that way I know the majority of the group is ready to move on. All right, Lori, I see we've gotten a few
Okay.
thumbs up, and you know, the animated ones, they kind of hurry up your screen and then they disappear. So I don't know if I've
Right.
missed any or not.
And I just wanted to point out that I saw a lot in here the words share and agree. But I think my favorite one on this list is we model collaboration and teamwork for our students. You know, we have to model that collaboration and teamwork for our students to also be able to turn around and do the same thing. And then another one is we seek and enjoy additional training to make our co-teaching better. So I'm going to shout out the summer conference in June. So DPI is hosting the summer conference, and we have some great sessions lined up. I will not be presenting because I am retiring this summer, but Maggie, who's done a fabulous job, and Amy Yunt, who's also with us right now, she will be co-training, co-presenting with Maggie. So if you have a co-teacher that you work with, that you think it would be great to come to a session like that together, I think that's very impactful. We've done this before where two teachers came together to that face-to-face training and co-teaching, and they worked together and even had some time to plan, and it's a great thing if that's something you can do.
Yes, we'd love to have you. All right, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're not going to go into breakout rooms, but we're actually going to try another piece of technology. I'm going to drop a Jamboard into the chat, and hopefully everyone should have access to that. There are 3 stages of co-teacher development. There is the beginning stage, the compromising stage, and the collaborative stage. Down at the bottom and in the chat, there is the link for one word, and it will take you to the Jamboard. And I see a few of you are on that now. What I want you to do is we're gonna talk about the 3 stages of co-teaching: beginning, compromising, and collaborative. And I want you to post one word to describe each stage as a team. So right now, what are some things that you think of when you think of the beginning stage, the compromising stage, and the collaborative stage? It's kind of like a trick question because we haven't gotten there yet, but just to see what you already know from the clues given. And maybe you could even drop a sticky note to share where you believe that you are. So if you feel inclined to do that, you can share a sticky note that shows which one you believe you fall under. Some of them make. There's nothing on slide 2, so I don't know. That was an accident. Just the first one. That's good. I also have a love-hate relationship with Jamboards, so I'm trying to love them more. Like it. It's funny because a lot of these I feel like could fit multiple places, so I think that's great. Mhm. Synergy. It's a good word from very early on tonight. All right, I'll give you just about a minute more. Mhm. I like how we've included like emotions and feelings and not just things that seem predominant when we're in each of these stages, like pieces of work or things that people have to do, but about the relationship itself. I think that's great. And Lori, can you see the Jamboard as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we can, if you have anything final that you want to add, go ahead and do that, but you also have access to this for later if you think of something else. But I love what I've seen for each category. Beginning, I see overpaid TA. When I first read that, I like laughed, but then I tried to catch myself. But it's all about the building trust. You're nervous, you're unsure, the planning has to start, you have to begin the training. And that is definitely something that's powerful. I know that in our county, where I am in Lee County, teachers that want to co-teach have to go through a training first. So I think that's a powerful tool that the county itself and the district has set forth. Under compromising, I see sharing and trust, which I feel like could go for both, and maybe they are. There's some influence. This is me now, reflecting and negotiating, and a lot of the non-negotiables. I like that, where compromise comes in. And I like how for collaborative, you shared that it's effective. You're in sync, you're ready to learn. I saw synergy, equal voice, and all of that. And I think these are so fun. And when we kind of dive into these in the next few slides, we've set up some fun kind of relationships to go with them. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. All right. So in the beginning stage, teachers are often kind of out of sync, where we know that in the end we're synced together, we're bouncing off each other's ideas. One teacher is seen as the boss and one is seen as the helper. So we aren't a team yet, but the goal is that we are working to get there. And to me, this is kind of like a blind date, right? You've just met for the first time. You're not sure how it's going to go. You're unsure of the other person, but you hope and think and know, hopefully know, that it can only get better from there. So I think the blind date kind of scenario is a fun way to look at it. And then after the beginning stage, we move in to the compromising stage. And I think you guys hit that on the head when you were talking about learning to share and negotiate. Both teachers direct some of the activities in the classroom. The specialist offers mini lessons or clarifies strategies that students may use. And I know, and I keep talking from personal experience, but that's kind of how my co-teaching journey started. I came in to a classroom that was doing the Daily 5, and I offered mini lessons and then led groups. And so that's kind of how it was. Like once they determined, oh wow, like she does know what she's talking about, right? Like it's not just the relationship, but it's the respect that's built after they see what you can do. So I think with this, with the compromising stage, you kind of move into a more instructional role. The strategies are more coordinated and it becomes more cohesive. So we're leaving that blind date stage and moving into the actual dating part. So we're progressing along the way. And you know where this progression is going. Finally, when you reach the collaborative stage, both teachers participate in presentation of the lesson. They provide instruction, and it's truly a classroom where you walk into and you wonder who is the content teacher and who is the English language development teacher, who the ESL teacher is. The chalk, if you will, it passes freely. You don't step on anyone's toes. You bounce back and forth with ideas. And the students, this is powerful to me, they go to both teachers for questions. They don't just save language questions for the ESL teacher, and they don't save content questions for the gen ed teacher. This whole entire thing is a process, and it's the trajectory that we want to get to with these two teachers to become more of a collaborative team. And this is what we would call the marriage merger, right? We're finally married, work through every stage. And this is where you get your work spouses and your work wives, and you really, truly don't know what to do when the other person's out. It becomes more of kind of, not that you're dependent on one another, but that relationship has just grown so strong that you depend on each other so much. And then lastly, I'm going to share in the chat one more Jamboard. Now that we have gone through the stages of co-teacher development, you will see that there are 3 different Jamboards. One is for the beginning stage, one is for the compromising stage, and one is for the collaborative stage. If you could think about these stages, and you can go to each board, you don't necessarily need to stay on one, but I only want you to think of one single word for each of these. What is one descriptive word for each of the 3 stages? And add that to the Jamboard. And throughout your journey, think about where you are. There's nothing wrong with being at the beginning stage. That's a great thing for us because we know that we can move forward. But go ahead and add one descriptive word to each stage on the Jamboard. I'll give you a few minutes for that. I see people are just getting started. I didn't know I had muted myself. I was just talking. These are always fun for me too because I see words that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. Maybe about 30 more seconds. You know, a lot of these too are such strong emotions. You find out a lot about yourself. Like I'm seeing brave and timid and getting out of your comfort zone. And all of that is so true. A lot of times I think people are afraid to take the next step just because you have to do that. It's something that's kind of out of your realm of control, but it's something that truly benefits kids. And I really, if any of you guys are looking to start your co-teaching journey, I think that's great. All right, Lori, I think you can take it away.
Right. I love the jam boards. That's such a neat activity.
Mm-hmm. And,
All
and
right.
feel free to get your last minute thoughts in there too. As we
Sure. Oh, yeah.
move to the next.
So this is just a cartoon, a comic that might be your reality. So I won't say you might, you will at some point be meeting with teachers who resist the idea of collaboration and co-teaching, at least at first, right? That happened to me on a couple of occasions. So, it's not easy for everyone. And so this is a process. So, but this is just a fun way to look at it. We have some powerful questions for you to try. So as you are establishing co-teaching relationships, as you are reflecting on a co-teaching relationship that you already have, or one thinking forward to one that you hope to work with next year, we want you to look at this list of questions. So we're kind of going back full circle and reflecting on this partnership. What do you want from your co-teaching partnership? You've really got to think about that. And then try to envision success. Can you describe it? There is this strategy visualization, and I love that. I've heard people saying if you can visualize it, then you can make it happen. What will you have to do to achieve this? What are the steps? What needs to be in place? What stops you? Think about that. What obstacles, what things happen, what problems that would stop you from being able to co-teach in the way that you want to? What options do you have? And sometimes that might be the scheduling. And maybe there's somebody you need to talk to about scheduling. What options do you have there with co-teaching? How will you or others know when it's worked? Right? It's just like the PLCs and DeForest questions of, how will you know students have learned what you've taught? Well, how will you know when co-teaching is working? How it's affecting your students in the classroom? What would it look like to your students? Think about it from their perspective. How does co-teaching look as the student? What would your students be doing differently in that co-teaching setting? What would they be doing differently than what they're doing now? And then what's next? So we want you to remember these questions. These are things that you can come back to. You might even create your own questions for reflection about your co-teaching relationship. We are going to move to thinking about implementation. So what goals can we take from here? Right? And here is our sentence starter. One goal I have for this school year is, or you might want to change that to one goal I have for next school year is, and you can certainly do that. But right now, we want you to have a time of reflection. So, in a notebook, on a piece of paper, on your computer, in a Google Doc, wherever you want to do this, we want you to write one goal and use this sentence starter. One goal I have for this school year is, or one goal I have for next school year is, and it should relate to collaboration and co-teaching, right? Once you've written this after this session, we want it to be a springboard for something you're going to do to really take action on that goal. And we're also asking that you email Maggie and me your goal. So you have our emails and we'll show them again at the end, but we really want you to email those goals to us so we can follow up with you maybe in a few weeks or months or next year to see how it is going. So I'll be quiet 1 minute and write your goal. And if you would like, you certainly can put it in the chat. All right, if you will wrap up writing your goal, one goal I have for this school year is, or one goal I have for next school year is, and remember to please share that with us in an email to both Maggie and me. We are going to connect co-teaching to the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System. We know that as teachers, we are continually working towards professional growth. So our students are number one, and that's why we do what we do. As we are learning and growing as a teacher, it has a great effect on our students. So tonight, before we wrap up, we want to look at the 6 standards. We have standard 1, teachers demonstrate leadership. Standard 2, teachers establish a respectful environment for a diverse population of students. Standard 3, teachers know the content they teach. Standard 4, teachers facilitate learning for their students. Standard 5, teachers reflect on their practice. And Standard 6, teachers contribute to the academic success of their students. If you are a teacher currently teaching in the classroom, then you are evaluated on these. If you are an administrator, then you use these to evaluate teachers. We want you to think about these standards, and the task tonight is, how does collaboration and co-teaching, right, the entire collaborative cycle, how does this help you meet teacher standards? So Maggie's going to put us back in our last breakout group for the night. And in that group, if you are, we have six breakout rooms, and it has the numbers on them, right, Maggie? So
Yes.
if you are breakout room 1, then obviously you're going to look at standard 1, okay, and so forth. Breakout room 2, standard 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, 5 is 5, 6 is 6. And you have the handout as well. It is in that folder. You have the North Carolina Professional Teaching Standards, and you can, think about the title here that's on the slide, or you can go more in depth. If you look into the document, you will see a paragraph that explains that standard and gives you some bullets. Teachers should, and it tells you what teachers should do in meeting that standard. So I would refer to that if you can, if you will, open that up and be ready to discuss that standard. All right. So Maggie's going to put us into these 6 breakout rooms and focus on that one particular standard for the group that you're in for about, let's see, I think we had 5 minutes is probably good. 5 or 6 minutes. If it's set up for 5, that's good. And then we'll come back together. All right.
Right, here we go. I'm trying to move some people around because some people are alone.
Okay.
Okay, Lori, are we bringing him back?
Is it 5 minutes already?
Oh, no. It's just not. Oh, what? Coming back. Starting to pop back, so should I go ahead and just end them?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. All right. Think we are all back.
All right, great. Welcome back. So hopefully you had just a few minutes. I know it wasn't long, but time to just discuss that one standard and how the collaborative cycle and co-teaching can help you meet that standard. And you might at another time want to go and look at the other standards and reflect on that as well. I do want to highlight standard 2. Teachers establish a respectful environment for a diverse population of students. I think, when we're teaching multilingual learners, we obviously, that fits right into standard 2 and all of them, but this one specifically. And in the document, it says teachers adapt their teaching for the benefit of students. Teachers collaborate with the range of support specialists to help meet the special needs of students through inclusion, and we're going to call it co-teaching, right? And other models of effective practice. Teachers engage students to ensure that their needs are met, right? So teachers should collaborate with specialists, is what this is saying, and engage students and ensure they meet the needs of their students through, we'll say, co-teaching and other models of effective practice. But we know that co-teaching has been shown to be very effective in the research, so we want to encourage that and in your professional development.
All right. And to kind of wrap up, the last thing that we're going to well, that's not true. We're going to ask you to do one more thing. But one of the last things that we're going to ask you guys to do tonight, if you were to have to convince your colleague to use co-teaching, how would you do it? I want you to think about writing a brief elevator speech by connecting co-teaching to one of the standards. So we'll give you a few minutes just to kind of jot down what you would say in order to convince someone at your school, whether it be an admin or someone that you would like to co-teach with. What would you say and how would you say it to get them on board with you? So we'll
And
give you.
I would say,
Go ahead, Lori.
imagine you're really on the elevator with them, right? The door's shut,
You
you're
don't have a
going
lot of time.
down, you have maybe 1 minute, and then the door's open, you walk out. What can you say in that 1 minute?
So we'll give you 2 minutes and I will talk to write something. All right, and while you're wrapping that up, I see some people have already left some ideas in the chat about Standard 2 and how it really helps with diverse learners. And also how someone said that they would pitch it by stating that co-teaching will lighten your load, which is true. It's so much easier to share work with other people. If anybody else would like to share in the chat or maybe even unmute, what is the one thing that you would say to others to get them to be on board with co-teaching, to buy into this relationship? Anybody? Two heads are better than one for academic growth. You get to share expertise and then you cover each other's weaknesses. Yep. Yeah, I like that. And build on each other's strengths too, for sure. All right. Thank you. If there's any more, you can add those to the chat, but if not,
I want to know how people were able to put their thumbs up in the chat because I can't figure out how to do it.
down at the bottom, there's a little thing that says hand raised, but the one beside of it, there's reactions, and you could do the little thumbs up or some.
But I did that and it came up on my picture. It didn't go in the chat.
No, I don't know how people join in the chat. Maybe an emoji. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, I just closed my chat out on accident. See, I don't know enough. I'm just over here clicking stuff.
All right. So,
the
go
chat,
ahead.
I can answer that question.
Sure.
You go to the chat box and you right click, and at the top there's emojis. So you can click on that and then pick whatever you'd like.
I don't have
guys
it.
are better than me.
I tried. I went to the internet and looked that up and it said if you hover and right click, but I don't have it.
Mine won't do it either. I'm on a Chromebook on.
Oh,
the
that
other-
might be why.
I don't know if that's why, because I've separate over here. It's
I'm
not
on
working.
the
for me.
PC.
Interesting.
I
We'll
have
to
a
play around.
Chromebook, so I don't know.
I mean, I'm just on a
Okay.
regular laptop, but anyway, it's really
Trial
bothering
and
me.
error, figuring these things out.
Thanks. Anyway.
All right. So we want to thank you on behalf of the North Carolina DPI ELD support team. Maggie and I both thank you so much for being here. If you will, unshade yourself, show yourself if you can on your video. We'd love to see your face and say goodbye. We also are asking that you do this survey. You're accessing the survey here. Not a survey about access, but accessing the survey here. If you will, you can take these last 5 minutes and complete it. If you will, please complete this in the next couple of days. This survey is part of getting your certificate of completion. So you can do it now and be done, which would be great, or do it in the next couple of days. And I'm assuming, as in the past, that in a few weeks you should receive a certificate of completion from DPI for your time spent with us for co-teaching. So thank you again for being here. Please remember to send us your goal. Email us, and our emails are here if you want to jot those down.
We've already
or come
gotten a
back.
few.
Awesome. Great. Love it. People are on it. Maggie, you want to say anything else to wrap us up?
No, y'all have been great. This is my first one, so I've learned a lot. Lori's helped me along the way, but you guys have been great. And our technology did get a little bit better this second time. We knew a little bit more of
Absolutely.
what we were doing.
Yes.
But in the chat, I've also dropped the link to the survey. And please share any feedback whatsoever, because like we said, we're always looking to improve this as well.
Yes. And I want to shout out Maggie. As she said, this was her first training and she has done a fabulous job. She's fabulous. So thank you all again. And hopefully we'll see you down the road in the education field, whether it's at a conference or a meeting or another webinar. But we encourage you to continue learning as always. And please join and register for other sessions that become available. And don't forget the summer conference. So thank you so much.
See you there.
We'll see you down the road. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.